Machine Travelers, Miss Z here, and I'm here today to talk to you about your timeline project. All right, one thing that I do want to point out that it is worth 170 points. That's not 170%, that would be 170 points. So if you don't do this, it is a lot of points and you really need it. It can really help your grade or it can really hurt your grade, so make sure that you do it. On your directions, it clearly states what you need to do, so I'm just going to go over that with you real quick. It is due December 13th, so you don't have much time. However, we do have Saturday tutorials this Saturday, and I will be there to help you work on this. So the first thing you need to do is to find the beginning and end dates of all the events that are on your list. You have 50 events. Some of them may not have an end date, but just do your best to try to figure that out. Remember, this is a multi-line timeline, so you should have 4 lines on your timeline. Each one of these is going to be designated to a different part of the world. If you look, I think it's on page 2 of your directions. The first line is going to be China and India. The second one is going to be Europe. The third one will be Africa. And the fourth one will be America. Now, this is super important. You should not have 4 separate timelines, okay? You need them all on one timeline. And the reason is because we want you to be able to see what's going on throughout the entire world, not just in each of these individual parts. Now, some of my students were concerned about, well, hey, sometimes it happens in 2 areas. That's true. If that's the case, then put it on 2 areas or just designate in your little description, because you have to write 2 to 3 sentences, just put in there that, this also occurred in blank. Your first event is the Neolithic Revolution. So find out when that started and put it on your timeline. Now we know the Neolithic Revolution starts in the Mesopotamia, Middle Eastern area. I would say you could put it with any of these. Well, I would say it would probably be closer with Europe or Africa. We're not going to be super picky on that, so just pick one, whichever one you feel like it would go in, and you're going to start it. You'll put Neolithic Revolution, you'll spell it out, and you'll put the date. Then you might want to put a line to designate where it's going to end. Now, this is really old part of the timeline, right? There's not a lot of other things. Your next thing is the start of Confucian philosophy. There might be a really big gap. So if there's a really big gap in between one of your events and you're like, I'd have to waste a whole bunch of space to show how long this was, you can simply do kind of like a zigzag or a lightning bolt type thing to break up the timeline and to show that this is a time break in between here and here. Another thing that I wanted to tell you, let's say that you have an event that's going on and there's another one that kind of overlaps it. You can put it on like this, write that event, and then you can put the one that overlaps like that. If it's going on in 2 places, you might want to put it down here as well for the same time frame and just say that that event is happening in 2 places. One of the questions that one of my students had today was about Buddhism, and they're like, well, Buddhism spread, is that what you're asking for? No, it clearly says the start of Buddhism. So all you're looking for is the start. You don't necessarily have to put on your timeline where and when it spread. You don't have to be that specific on it. But in your 2 to 3 sentences, you could talk about how and why it spread and where it spread in that area. Another question I had today was, do you have to annotate this specific timeline? On the example that we gave you, it is annotated on the timeline. But if you don't have space or you're doing it on paper and you're like, hey, I'd rather just put my annotations on a separate sheet of paper, that's fine too. But you have to have these events where they go on the timeline. So the first thing I would suggest is to look up all of your events and get the begin and the end date if you can find it. While you're looking them up, I'd also get your 2 to 3 sentences. Remember, this has to be in your own words. So you need to look at the event. If you don't remember what it was, then read a little bit about it and tell us the main idea. Why does it happen? How does it happen? Where does it happen? When does it happen? Things like that in 2 to 3 sentences. So that's what I would do first. Once you get that done, then you can put them on the timeline. You have 2 options. You can either do it digital or on paper. Either one of those will work. If you do it digital, I would suggest Google Slides. That's pretty easy. But on each slide, you need to have 4 lines, remember, because you're putting 4 timelines basically into one timeline. Other thing that I want to remind you is that remember, wherever 0 is on your timeline, you're counting down to 0. So let's say 0 is here. You count down, and then you're going to count back up from 0. That's important. The other thing you need to remember is that this stands for CE or AD. So sometimes when you're looking at these events, you'll see it marked as AD. Same thing as CE. Also over here, BCE is the same as BC. Once you get done with finding your information and the dates, then you're gonna slap it on your timeline. When you're looking for your information, I would mark it which one of these it goes on so that you remember and you don't have to look it up again. Make it easier for yourself. Before you put it on your timeline then, I would put them in order so that you know what order they're gonna go in and how you're gonna put it on your timeline, how much space you might need. Also, at the top of your timeline, if you wanna put a general countdown of, years, like 10,000 BCE and then 8,000 BCE. If you want to do it like that and then continue to count down, that's fine. Or you can also mark it on here. I would suggest definitely putting the dates with your event so that you remember. The reason that we're having you guys do this is so that you can prepare for the final. That would benefit you to know what order everything is in. Once you get everything on your timeline, you need 10 events that are illustrated or have a picture with it. If you're doing it digital, put a picture on there from online. If you are writing it, obviously you'll have to draw it, or you can print out a picture from online and paste it on there. Either one will work, but 10 have to be illustrated. You also get points for AP level work and creativity, so make sure you're actually putting some effort into it. If you're not putting any effort into it, then you're probably not going to get those points. Last but not least, this can either be on your timeline or a separate sheet of paper. You need 4 causes and effects explained. Those are 5 to 7 sentences, and if you're telling me a cause, then say the effect and how it connects. You also need 1 change, and you're going to explain how that change happens. And you need 1 continuity, and you're going to explain how that continuity happens, the how and the why and the details about it. Another helpful thing that you want to look at is the rubric. The rubric pretty much lays out everything that you need on there in order to get your maximum amount of points. And trust me, you want this maximum amount of points because this will definitely boost your grade if you do it well. So just to recap, the first thing I would do is look up all your events, get those 2 to 3 sentences, get the beginning and end date. Then put them in order. Then it will be easier to put them on the timeline. If you can, get those 50 events done. Come to Saturday tutorials and we'll work on the timeline together with whoever shows up during Saturday tutorials. Those are from 9 to 12. I will be there this Saturday to help you. If you have any more questions that are specific to your project, you can stop by the Learning Commons. And that's it for the timeline project. It's really that simple. It might take a little bit of time to make your timeline, but you got this. So let me know if you have any more questions, and thanks for listening.